move through them a little bit slowly, I think, and try to explain things well. I don't actually have slides. However, I did write a book, and it's titled The Art of Swimming and the Game of Racing. And everything is that I experienced as a club coach is detailed thoroughly in the book. So if you're interested to think further into this or you have questions, that's a good place to look as well. So I think the first subject that I'd like to think about in grassroots coaching is that when you begin with a team, you want to set a state of consciousness for the team. And consciousness is kind of a tricky word. Most people relate it to self-awareness. The definition is the state of being aware of oneself, one's environment, one's bodily sensations, and one's thoughts. But consciousness is different from self-awareness because it really involves the conscious understanding of one's own existence altogether. And in team consciousness, that's taken a step farther. And I've defined that as being the collective minds relate according to things that are understood. And the team is aware of the elements that are required to achieve the way the team wants to represent itself. So when you start with a group of swimmers, if you're starting with them in the beginning state, then there is no team consciousness to speak of. But as you progress through stages of development, that consciousness grows. Your intelligence altogether for the sport grows, and you become connected as a group of people to elements that are expected by the coach and the coaching staff for the team. So a good example of that is I like to start practice from a start. And I like for it to be a good start. I want everybody to be on time. Don't want anything to be lazy in that. I really want it to be a good start. And it kind of gets the practice off to a beginning that will carry over into the other things that you're doing in the practice. So, yeah, typically if in the beginning, if people were late or if they didn't give their best effort on the start, then there would be an opportunity to do it over again sometimes, or maybe not. You might be out of the practice eventually if you were doing it improperly or didn't care about being on time for it or whatever. So over time, that became ingrained into the team, and that became part of the team's consciousness that everybody would get to practice on time. We would start the practice from a really good start. Typically, we just do one length of the pool on that first part of the practice so that everybody could really concentrate on that start and doing all the elements from the point of take your mark and go all the way through the underwater work and into the breakout onto the surface of the water. We tried to do that as well as we could. So that became part of the consciousness of the team. And in the later stages, it was just understood. It was expected. So that's a good example of team consciousness changing over time. With grassroots coaching and club coaching, I think there are 3 stages of development that are fairly time consuming. The first stage is to be able to teach the technique or the techniques, I should say, for all the 4 strokes, for the starts, for the turns, for the finishes, um, everything that has anything to do with technique in the strokes would be part of that first stage. And the thing that takes time for it is that you're really trying to uh, place the things that they're doing correctly into their nervous systems. So it becomes part of who they are and the way that they swim almost without thought. And typically that takes some time and repetition to do it. It's not done necessarily fast at all. It's really done controlled. And it's an important element to make the team be what you want it to be in the long term. So years ahead, that you can always rely on the fact that you've been through this technical stage. Eventually, swimmers begin to teach swimmers actually. As they come on to the team, they'll be in the lanes and go, this is what he means by that, or I'll show you what to do. And then it kind of spreads through the team the way that you want it to be over time. The second stage is the training to race stage, and that deals with the physiology in the sport. So you're trying to develop endurance. You're trying to develop an ability to maintain that stroke technique over time and distance, and to be able to graduate your speed as you go through the distance of a race, so that the technique stays with you all the way. So that phase also is time consuming. It can be, you can really affect consciousness within a year in the training stage, although it can take longer. Depends on really where you're starting from. If you're starting with a group of kids that are just beginning, then it's probably going to take longer. But if you are taking over a team that has some experience with training already, it won't take as long. And the last stage, and the third stage, is what I call the mental game. I spoke on the mental game the last time that I spoke here. And that really, I guess you would say, it involves the psychology of racing. But specific to the goal, you want it to create an action plan that you're going to live by. So you'll set a goal, possibly and probably more than one goal. You'll have goals for different strokes and different distances and so forth. And you'll set a goal and you'll say, I want to achieve a certain time, or I want to make the qualifying standard for a certain meet, or I want to win a race against a certain person or people. And so you set that goal. And then the next stage after that is that you create an action plan, but not just an action plan that you're going to write on paper. It's an action plan that you're going to live by. So everything that happens from that point forward becomes part of your experience. If you live the action plan, you get the proper rest, the proper nutrition that you need, you practice the way that you have outlined your goals. So, for example, if you want to get out fast in your race, then you set your goal accordingly with split times that you write down and create for yourself. Or if you want to gradually build your speed over the course of the race, then that's something that you put into your action plan and you practice that way as well. So it's important that you get to practice, that you're not skipping practice. That's usually not part of the action plan, and that you live that action plan to achieve your goals. So typically in a season's time, I like to go through 3 stages of uh, physical development. The first stage being an aerobic stage, which typically means that you're swimming to improve endurance, but in a comfort zone. So typically your heart rates will range less than or equal to 140. And it's pretty comfortable to swim at those heart rates and to be able to concentrate on your technical elements and still improve your endurance. And the second stage is what I refer to as the max VO2 stage. That means you're trying to create a maximum oxygen uptake for your work. And typically your heart rates then will be greater than or equal to 150 or more, up to about 190. 190 is an anaerobic stage, which means that if you continue at that speed and those heart rates, you'll actually fail at the repetitions unless you get more rest between them. So those are the stages of development that I think are pretty critical to grassroots. And as I stated before, if you're taking over a team that's just beginning, like those kids here in Vero Beach that came out in their board shorts and bikinis, it's going to take a while for them to reach a high level of consciousness. But if you're taking over a team that's already experienced to some extent, you may be able to make that time period faster than that. So altogether, I'll say you're coaching kids that start out probably about 6 years of age. And when you finish with them and they graduate from high school, they're about 18 years old. So during that time period, you have at least a decade where you're kind of guiding them through a lot of changes in their stages of life and their maturity and their development. They change a good bit when they kind of reach into that mid-teen area and start to experience things that go along with puberty and that. And then as they get into high school years, then things like socialization begin to be part of the formula that you're dealing with those kids. They're changing. They also typically start to develop their independence in those high school years. So oftentimes that means they're saying inside their own minds, you don't need to tell me what to do about that. I already know. So when they hit that stage, you really need to find sometimes some different ways to communicate with them. And it's often the case that if you have a spirited high school athlete that really, wants to kind of go a different direction from the way that you're going, you might have to pull them in and conference with them individually or with their parents to try to help that guidance process during that time. So during that, you're hoping that by the time they graduate from high school, that you have really impacted them and that they're ready to go on to college swimming. They have a high level of consciousness as they go through those college years or maybe even into professional swimming. So very important, I think. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about technique, and I'm going to concentrate a little bit on freestyle, a little bit more on freestyle. And I'm hopeful that you can use some of the concepts associated with the freestyle and apply them to the things that I'll say about breaststroke and butterfly. But there are a number of things that I think need to be created. This is for freestyle and backstroke, to be honest. We call those long axis strokes, where you imagine that you're swimming on an axis that goes from the top of your head through the middle of your body and coming out the other end, and you're continuously rotating on that axis to perform the strokes. But the first thing that is important in both of those is breath. So it's really unbelievable, I think, even from lesson programs, and you get kids out of lesson programs, how little they've really concentrated on breath. But breath is at the basis, it's the essence of what you do to be able to experience endurance. You really need to exchange oxygen and carbon dioxide fairly equally so that you can continue to move. If you're holding your breath and trying to breathe too quickly and not rhythmically, then often that can affect your endurance in a negative way. Whereas if you really breathe well and rhythmically, then that affects your endurance in a positive way. I like to have athletes watch elite swimmers, especially males, I think, swim backstroke. And when you watch them swim backstroke, you'll see that when they're swimming, their mouths will open as wide as they can open them, and they'll pull in as much oxygen as they can possibly pull in, through their nose and mouth to get what they can get, and then push that air out on the next stroke or within the stroke cycle to the way that to their liking. But breath is important. It's a very important thing to create in the beginning stage. And there's lots of ways to do that, just going underwater and timing your breath, both as you release it when you're underwater and when you come up above water, you pull it back in. And it's also important that when you move, that you're putting your head position in positions of advantage so that you get good breath. So that's the next part of the equation here for teaching technique is the body line. And we always like to say that a longer vessel is faster than a shorter vessel. So you really measure your body's length from fingertips to toes. And the longer you can make that body line, the better it is. You're also kind of moving when you're swimming, you're moving from side to side. So your hips will be relatively stacked. So one higher than the other, and you're rotating on that axis to create that body position equal on both sides. I do have a picture. I don't know if you'll be able to see it. I'll put it up here. This is a good body line. Let me go that way. Yeah, put it in front of my face. This is a boy. He's a 10-year-old boy. And you can see that body line, he has his hand position at equal depth to his underarm on that side, that his hips are stacked, and that his legs are in line with his hips. So that's very important to try to create that body line for all people. And then from that position, he'll just, when he makes his pull, he'll switch to the other side and try to create that body line on the other side. And the other thing that's important to see in that picture is, I'll put it up again, is that you can see that his head is in line with his spine. So that's an important position as well. If you lift the head or duck the head, either way, it gets too high or it gets too low and out of that alignment, then it affects your body position in the water. So very important there to do that. The other thing that you're doing when you get into that body line is you're reducing the resistance of the water against your body. So to the extent that you can reduce that resistance to your body's movement, then it helps you to go faster. So not only is a longer vessel faster than a shorter vessel, but being able to get back to that body line on each side is important as well. We talk about balance points, that everybody has balance points that surround the lungs. And the lungs are important because that's where the air is held in the lungs, and you're most buoyant in the water surrounding your lungs. So again, looking at this picture, this boy is, I have to orient myself. This boy is pressing in at his armpit, just under his lungs. And that helps him to basically leverage his hips and his legs up even with his body, so he doesn't have to do any muscular work to reach that position. He just has a perfect line all the way down his body. The hips are important. The hips are stacked at this point in the body line, and he's going to wait until he gets to a position that we call the front quadrant, which I'll show here. This is a swimmer on the lower picture that's just reaching the front quadrant. So as her hand touches the water, that's when the hips will move forward as if they're pushing that hand forward into that line. So her concentration will be on moving when she gets to that point. And it's ideal to be able to maintain your stroke technique and get the full use of your hips as a power generator to reach that front quadrant position. When we talk about front quadrant, there are 4 quadrants. There's the quadrant in front of your shoulders and up, the quadrant below your shoulders and down, and then your body on its axis. The top part is one quadrant and the lower part is the other quadrant. So what we call those are front quadrant, rear quadrant, top quadrant, and lower quadrant. So she's going to move, driving her hip forward with that arm reaching forward when she reaches that front quadrant position. I like to compare it to kayaking too. Most people tend to pull on an oar when they're kayaking, but I think you get more power if you place the oar into the water and get purchase on the water, but drive from the other side and push that upper oar forward. It'll give you more power for the lower oar. Then the final thing is the kick. The kick is really let's see how I can say this. The real purpose of the kick is to keep the legs in line with the body. Okay. A lot of people use it for propulsion, and it can be used for propulsion, but that's not its primary focus. If you over kick in the early part of a race or even the early part of a practice, it will tend to use more oxygen than you want to use by kicking vigorously. So it's best to use it for the purpose of maintaining your body line and then saving it for, say, the end of the race or a point in the race where you want to move away from a competitor or something like that. And you actually use the kick then for propulsion. But by and large, it's not for the purpose of propulsion except as needed. And then the final thing, it's not really mechanical, but it's an understanding about the nature of water. So the nature of water has 2 elements to it. The first is water can it has a buoyancy element. So if you're relaxed in the water and you allow yourself to let the water hold you, then it will keep you buoyant and enable you to stay on top of the water the way you want to. It tends not to happen if you tighten up or if you get nervous and, things like that. The buoyancy element might be lost a bit, but ordinarily water will support you and what you want to do with it as long as you relax and let it work with you. And the other is feel for the water. So the water also has a tendency to be sort of hard. And most of us think of water as being something that's soft, that will move around our hands and body or arms or whatever. And that's true, it does. However, as you accelerate with your hand on the water and you create a force in a certain direction, you can feel that water on your hands and forearms and so forth, and actually create the movement forward. So we refer to that as feel for the water. It's an important element to have as you move. So with freestyle and backstroke, they're not much different. They're just on different sides. You just head down or head up, and everything else is pretty much the same. The one thing about backstroke is we talk about front quadrant with freestyle as being the point where you switch sides. But on backstroke, I like to have swimmers watch their hands as they come through their field of vision. So as the hand comes up through your field of vision here, and you can see it, that's the point at which to switch sides, ideally. It has sort of a quadrant relationship to it, but most people tend to look into the sky if they're outdoors, or up at the ceiling if they're indoors. And I think you're best if you will be waiting for your hand to come through your field of vision and you're watching it, so that it gives you the cue to make your switch at that time. Very important. So relative to breaststroke and butterfly, you're still trying to keep your line as well as you can. The key to both of those strokes, or an important key, is to have the hips in their highest position, which means basically your butt at the surface of the water when your arms are fully extended. So if you have that positioning at that time, then your hips will work for you as they drop down from that position and you move through the stroke. It'll add to your power. If you do not, or if you fail to get your hips up at that point in time when your arms are fully extended, then you'll lose that capability to, or you'll lose that power in the stroke that you would be able to generate from your hips. Okay, so all together in butterfly and backstroke, you still want your head in line with the spine for the most part. For example, on breaststroke, when you in sweep, the head stays in line with the spine. The eyes are looking at a 45-degree angle as your hands explode forward, really drive forward or lunge forward. In breaststroke, the legs work off the hips also. So as the hips are beginning to drop, that's when the legs are coming up. And that way the hips assist the legs getting to your butt. You don't have to pull them with your muscular force to get them to the butt. And then let's see. Oh yeah, the head position. And I mentioned it in breaststroke. The head position's in line with the spine, and your eyes are looking at about a 45-degree angle. In butterfly, though, you're going to just elevate the chin slightly above the water surface and gain your breath at that point there. So I have a picture here of breaststroke. You can see the head position there, and you can imagine that the hands are really lunging forward, and pulling her body forward. Right in that pocket. He's just barely lifted his chin above the water surface so he can get the breath. And that'll help you to maintain your body line in that way. Okay. So the next stage really out of the technique stage is training. And we have a formula that we use for training. And I'll say it with using the full words, but then I'll abbreviate it to the letters that we use for it. So this formula is speed equals stroke rate times, I'm sorry, speed equals stroke length times stroke rate. Okay, it's important to say the stroke length first. That's what you're teaching first, and it's best to create that element in your races as well, so that you've created stroke length on the way out in the races. You're going as fast as you can go from using stroke length, and then you add your stroke rate as needed to be able to move in the race. All right. So when we abbreviate that, it's S for speed equals SL times SR. Okay. And that's an important formula because most of your training is going to be between those two elements of stroke length and stroke rate. We measure efficiency in stroke length by counting strokes. So you create a stroke count for yourselves, and there's two parts to that. There's stroke count that's easy, that is really focused on trying to minimize or reduce the stroke count as low as you can get it. And that's important from an efficiency standpoint, but it's not very relevant to racing. So it's really having the lowest stroke count that you can have and going as fast as you can go in that stroke count that's relevant. And that may have stages to it. So for example, you might start out the first 50 at a lower stroke count and then gradually increase your stroke rate so that your stroke count goes higher as you go through the race, and that will help you to split the race more evenly. So you're always playing, really. That's the game of racing, is you're playing that game between stroke length and stroke rate, and trying to find out what's ideal for you. Again, very important to try to be as fast as you can be in the lowest stroke count that you can be that fast. So that will really help your racing a lot. If your stroke rate is too high going out in the race, then it's probably going to affect your endurance at the end of the race. If it's too low, then it'll affect your speed going out in the race. But if you know exactly what you want it to be, then you can create that stroke count for yourself and be efficient and fast at the same time. The next stage of this training level is interval training, and that deals with heart rates a good bit. So I mentioned to you earlier that there's an aerobic phase. We typically will stay pretty much in an aerobic training phase in the beginning of a new season. So we're starting out, swimming starts for the short course season or the fall. The beginning of swimming is in September. This is how we usually think about it here in the States. And we'll typically stay in an aerobic phase for about 6 weeks. where we're really concentrating on technique and staying in the comfort zone, keeping our heart rates 140, 140-ish most of the time, 130, 140. It's a pretty good comfort level there. And after we get through that phase, we move into what I call a max VO2 phase. Again, I mentioned that earlier. That's the maximum uptake of oxygen that your body can achieve. And typically the heart rates in that phase are between 150 and 190 per minute. You're really testing yourself pretty much in that phase of training. Typically, rest intervals will be short. That is 10 seconds, 15 seconds, not long. They could be as high as 30 seconds if you're going a longer distance. But typically, the rest intervals are not high. So you're developing a level of endurance that you're anticipating will help you when you're swimming back-to-back events. Maybe you're swimming multiple days, you're swimming trials or preliminary sessions in the morning and final sessions at night. You're swimming relays, you're doing warm-ups and swim downs during the meet. You might be doing, as much as 5,000 yards a day or 6,000 yards a day during the meet, depending on the distances of your events and how many you're swimming. But it's a very important phase of training. And then we hit what we call peak performance in the final stage of a season. Could be a year, just depends on the level of the athlete. But this peak performance stage is that area where we're really giving a lot of attention to anaerobic swimming. That's swimming where you're just going as hard as you can go and to be as fast as you can be. But you can't keep doing that on a short rest interval. So it requires more rest to be able to get to speeds that will allow your heart rate to get above 190 and also to get to speeds that are race specific. So it's a very important time period in the training. We say that during that peak performance time period, we are trying to overcome neurological inhibition. I'll say that again. We're trying to overcome neurological inhibition. Now, what that means is I like to compare it to, like, here in the States, school buses have part on them that's called a governor, and that governs their speed. It won't let them go higher than a specific speed for safety. And everybody's body has an internal governor. It has neurological inhibition where typically it doesn't want to go, at speeds higher than what it thinks that you should go, because it's a physiological protection for you ordinarily. But to reach goals and get to something better, you need to overcome that. So the peak performance stage is where you're doing shorter distances. You're really trying to go as fast as you can possibly go. You're just guns out, giving it all you've got to be as fast as you can be to overcome that neurological inhibition. And you do that for a period of time. Typically, we do that during the championship phase of our training. And that might involve maybe 3 or 4 swim meets, actually, over a 6-week or 2-month period of time, where you're constantly asking of yourself that you can reach these highest speeds during training and during certain races and that. So peak performance is a very important time. I do explain in more detail the physiology of overcoming neurological inhibition in the book. But for here, I think that's an explanation I hope that people can understand. When I was 5, we were living in France. My father was in the army. We were stationed in France, and this was a long, long time ago. So they had these jacks that you had to use a bar to get the jack to lift the car, and there was a base at the bottom of the bar, and wasn't very stable, really. But my father was under our car and working with the car jacked up, and he was looking at something underneath the car that he wanted to fix. And I was out there with them, and my mother was working in the yard somewhere close by. And the jack slipped, and the car uh, came down on him. And right away, we went to the back of the car, and my mother, with my help, which wasn't much, she was able to lift the car high enough off of him in that instance. So my sister pulled on my dad's legs and pulled him out from under the car. And ordinarily, she would not have been able to lift the back of that car. She wasn't strong enough. But at the time and in the emergency of the moment, she overcame her neurological inhibition and lifted their car enough for him to be able to slide out. So that's another example of overcoming neurological inhibition. And we use it in a training sense to try to be the best we can be. And then finally, the third stage is what I've called and referred to as the mental game. It deals with goal setting. And typically what's done is usually a number of goals will be set, because typically in the States, kids are swimming multiple events, and they'll set goals for, the most important events to them. And once they set the goal, that's simple. I mean, it just states, what you'd like to achieve, whether it's qualifying for a certain meet by reaching a certain time standard, or whether it's winning a race at a given meet, or whether, maybe you have a close competitor and you want to beat that person or in a race or whatever, but you set whatever your goal might be. But the most important thing is the action plan. So the goal, anybody can set a goal. It's in your mind for a moment. It's done, but it's the day-to-day life that really determines whether you're going to achieve the goal. And so you create an action plan. Typically that happens with the coach. Coach is helping the athlete create an action plan. That action plan will involve practice attendance, how you matriculate through the practice, and do the objectives in the practice as they're designed, and stay motivated all the way through the season to be able to come out the other side and achieve your goal. It's very important to live the action plan. To the extent that you don't, you reduce the possibility that you'll achieve the goal. And to the extent that you do, you increase the possibility that you'll achieve your goal. It doesn't mean it definitely will happen or won't happen based on your action plan, but the odds are more with you if you live the action plan than they are if you don't. So it's very important time. And then the last stage of the goal setting is the peak performance opportunities that you have, that you use those opportunities every step of the way in those championship meets and in the peak performance practice opportunities and so forth, to be able to go past the levels where you are right now. So most of the time, your athletes are pretty motivated by that, and they'll really, try to do their best. And if they're not doing their best to achieve that process, then you're there as the coach to try to help to motivate them or inform them to move along and reach their goals. through those peak performance opportunities. So the last part that I want to say is that, again, it's just a reminder that you're with these kids for basically a decade of time. And your real goal is to work with them through their life changes, whatever happens during their lives over those 10 or 12 years, so that when they graduate from high school, they're ready to take on the challenges that will come with swimming in college or as a professional or however they're doing it if they continue. And then the other part is the team performance. So looking back, when I told you that, we generally each team started at some level of consciousness, and gradually my goal as the coach was to change or transfer that level of consciousness to a higher one where everybody on the team or most of the people on the team understand what we're doing and why we're doing it, and it becomes accepted. So in the beginning, you might be imposing discipline on athletes to get them to do what you want to do and to change their consciousness. But over the course of time, you want that discipline to be self-discipline. So they understand the reasons why you're doing certain things and that they're using those reasons to try to help themselves perform to a higher level. And in doing that, as the individuals within the team do that, the team actually becomes on a higher level that is respected and understood by those that are in the competitive game itself. So that's pretty much what we do in grassroots coaching. It is grassroots definitely in the beginning. It does get more sophisticated over the course of time, but you'll have actually, if you stay at one team for multiple decades, then you'll take kids generationally. As the generations go through, that'll affect their consciousness on the team as well. So I'm wondering, did I explain it, or do you have questions, or how can I help you now?
Hey, well, thanks so much. I think we're all here, still listening, absorbing your insights. Anybody have questions? You can use the chat box. How's your team going these days? I know you're somewhat retired, and but the old squad is under the newer coaches. How are they doing? They're getting into the water this time of year?
Oh yeah, they just started up the new short course season. So actually, there's a lot going on. I do still own the business. So actually, that's in the book too. Most of the teams in the United States are owned by nonprofit organizations. But when I was in my early 50s, I bought a pool and bought the business. And so I still own the business. And there's a lot of elements going there. There's two pools. One is a training pool for competition. The other is a teaching pool for teaching lessons. There's a swim shop there in a clubhouse building. We installed what's called a Move Strong dry land element on the campus. So there's everything from rings to sleds to all kinds of dry land exercise and strengthening exercise on that campus. We have another pool that we use that's also a training pool for competitive. That's a few miles down the road. We just had a girl last night that was attempting the English Channel swim. She didn't make it across. She got a wave crashed on her, and she tweaked her back when that happened, and it her left side got numb, and she had to pull up out of the swim. But she'll make another try at it. She was trying to do the Triple Crown. She's already done 2 stages of it: the Catalina swim, the swim around Manhattan, and now she was trying the English Channel, so she's still got that to do. But yeah, the team is doing well, and yeah, I'm still in contact with them weekly. It seems like on some level, whether it's something to do with the swim school or something to do with the competitive team or the business itself. So yeah, pretty active.
Well, great. Thanks for the update.
Was there any terminology that I could explain further that was, you know, when you go through something like this, a lot of times it's a little overwhelming.
I don't know. We speak the same language. I don't know about those others from around the world.
Yeah. Again, I think, you know, I talked about a good bit, and I did the last time I spoke too on the mental game. And really, I wrote the book not to make any money off of it, but what I really wanted to do was to describe my experience with club coaching, because club coaching really doesn't get that much attention as a learning process. And mostly when you go to clinics and that, you're listening to a coach of a great swimmer, you know, that's done something great. And, you know, that they're often older or professionals or collegiate, and you don't really get to learn about what's relevant to a club coach who's got kids all ages and all levels and lots of them, and how you matriculate through that. But the book really details just about everything that I ever experienced as a coach, and really enjoyed writing it from that point of view. Sometimes you don't realize what you were doing or thinking until you start to put it on paper.
Hey, well, I know there's a new customer for you that you might want to sell the book to, is the new CEO/president of USA Swimming.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
Mr.
This is
Rain.
a kind of a turbulent time in USA Swimming right now, I think.
Yeah, and he's coming to us from golf, and admittedly says that he doesn't know a whole lot about swimming. So you should send him a little link to where he could buy the book and do some reading before he moves
Yeah,
onto
but
the go.
he's good in marketing. I think he's good in marketing because he has the experience of handling the marketing stuff. So he was chosen by the USA, the swimming. Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think that's a part of the being a head coach I really wasn't doing until I bought the business. And when I bought the campus and started doing the business, of course, marketing is really an important element of attracting swimmers to your program. And now the paradigm or the situation has changed in the county where we live. So actually, I was just writing to, there's 2 guys that are running the business and doing the coaching and teaching and everything now. And I was writing to them about, you know, changing things a little bit and using the marketing to be helpful in that. That's really important.
Coach,
Yeah.
your venue was your venue before. Now it's Chad Onken, who is handling the venue. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Are you related to Chad Onjin?
I'm not related to him, but I coached him from the ages of 12 to 18. And then he went to college. And initially, when he went to college, he was planning, and in fact, he started in pre law. He wanted to be a lawyer. But by the time he was past his sophomore year, he called me up and said, I think I want to coach, Okay, and we began to talk about it a good bit. So I actually mentored him all through that process where he was coaching. When he got out of college, he got with a team and had some teams, and I mentored him along the way and eventually convinced him to come home so that I could retire from the deck coaching. And the other one that's owning half of the business there is John Smithson. And John has worked with me since 2004 in the business. So he's totally aware of every element of it. And he kind of runs the competitive part a little bit more. Chad really takes care of a lot of the business part and the swim school part. And both of them are interconnected in the business altogether. So sometimes Chad's in the coaching and sometimes John's in the business, in the swim school and stuff. So they move back and forth.
Coach, let's make a very simple explanation for the coaches to understand it clearly. Okay, some of the coaches here are not really an old coach or a swimmer. Okay, what is for your perception or for your interpretation? Okay, uh, how many classification of coaches that you see? For us, for me, my classification is only the coaches for honor, focused on honor, producing honor for the country, and just focus on being an Olympian and being a productive winner. Now, that's for the honor coaches. Now, the other one is for making money. Okay, maybe you can add on to that. Okay, um, most of the coaches who wanted to focus on money, it's just business. Okay, so can you add on to that? Maybe you do have some other opinions with regards to that.
Yeah, I think that's a really great question. When I first started coaching, there really were no professional swim coaches at that time. This is back in the 60s, 1960s. And I think I was the first full-time paid coach in Virginia. Not positive of that, but I was pretty early. And yeah, typically they would make about what a school teacher would make for many years. Eventually, it changed. So now, basically, a lot of coaches start in what's called summer leagues. So they'll coach during the summers, and they may get a small amount of money for coaching that summer league situation. A lot of coaches start there. The graduation from that is to club coaching. And club coaches make everything from, they might make what a school teacher makes still. Head coach typically is making about what a principal for a high school would make, maybe, 70,000 in there maybe per year. College coaches, the range is very wide for them. We have basically about 4 levels of college swimming. The more famous ones are Division 1, 2, and 3. Division 1 coaches typically are paid the most, and some of them make a lot of money if they have a team that's in the top 10 at the National Collegiate Championships. Then they could be making upwards of 200,000 and as much as maybe even $1 million per year, depending on the school. And I think Bob Bowman is probably making a pretty good amount now, maybe more than that. Then from, the top 25 to the top 10, typically they'll be making somewhere in the area of 100,000 per year, maybe. And so, it's an average. The Division 2 and 3 coaches are probably making about what club coaches make typically, which is a club head coach maybe would make between 50 and 100,000 per year. Presently, if they've got a pretty good sized team, that would mean, in the area of 300 kids. If they have less than that, club coaches or assistant club coaches are making between probably 30,000 and 50,000 per year, maybe. So there's a wide range in how they make it. As a business owner, when I think when I bought the business, I think I was making about 75,000 a year with the nonprofit before that. And when I bought the business, my first years in the business, I didn't make anything really. I was starting up the business, and it cost more to run the business than I was, able to afford. Eventually, everything grew, and so by the end, I was making pretty good money. I think from different elements of the business. It wasn't just a salary. It was, different business elements that I sometimes made money at and sometimes didn't. But that's how the money goes here in the States. And that's how the coaching goes too. It's not unusual for a coach to start out in the summertime and then graduate to a year-round club. And typically college coaches oftentimes come out of the, college swimming. So they may have been college swimmers, and then they'll become a graduate assistant at some college, and then they'll become head coaches at those colleges, maybe. Certifications. The American Swim Coaches Association has an official certification classification, and it's between level 1 and level 5. So there's 5 different levels depending on, how your swimmers perform over time, and, that you take certain courses over that time as well. Does that explain that?
Yes, coach. Yes, coach. It's just that when you mentioned the certification before, we are actually looking at levels to be given on a certain period of time, like 6 months on the next level. Okay, but now we see some clinics are doing in just one day you can take 2 levels or 3 levels, okay, on coaching clinics. Normally before we have certain criterias of achievement before you reach a certain level. But now it's been a race of how many certificates would you like to get. That's the trend on most of the certificate situations now. Unlike before, you're supposed to achieve a certain criteria before you go to the next level. Okay, uh, that's been existing for a lot of years before. Just lately, I was just shocked of uh, being given level 3, level 4, level 5, or sometimes in just one one visit of a clinic. Okay, because they're paying that much. Okay, that is the situation where I see me. I make it a point that they're gonna be having a lot of tasks to finish it. If I if we see that the person doesn't deserve, I'll try to hold it. Okay. Now that is why we're trying to make it a point that we we wanted exams and others. This still what I see is the old school method of coaching education before was better rather than now, because now I see it's a race of getting certificates.
Mm.
Mm.
That's a really important point. I think that's really important. Um, for coaching, if you, I'm not sure what level you're talking about people coaching, whether they're coaching uh, young swimmers or whether they're coaching, semi-adults or collegiate age and that. But regardless, I think there are a few important elements. And I think one is the technique. I think you can't really learn technique in a one-day clinic. uh,
Yeah,
yeah, I think there should be a certification that involves an understanding of mm, the science that we call it here is kinesiology. It's a science of movement and how it applies to water. It's an important element, I think, for people to teach, and it can't be done. I mean, it might be able to be introduced well over a weekend, but and I think if you concentrate, and you're spending hours in a day over some time periods, you can get through that, in a reasonable amount of time. A few sessions of weekend sessions type things. Uh, the other part is the physiology, and I would guess that you would have to really certify somebody and think that it's a valuable certification, then there would be some reading required in addition to some practical experience with clinic type situations. But yeah, the physiology, I think, is it's not it's not something you can learn in a little bit of time. I mean, you have in a collegiate program, in a physical education program, you would take at least a semester of physiology of exercise. So, that might require a bit more time. And then the last part is really uh, that mental game part that I think is really the thing about it is you have to have some experience through the first two stages to really uh, empathize and understand the mental game and what's involved in that. That's not as time consuming, I don't think, as the second stage of physiology, but it is an important one. And it also deals with probably some sociology as kids get into their teen years in particular. Some things you might, run into there. But Yeah, I think for a certification that's a valuable certification, you would probably want to create some system by which coaches could, really benefit from the information there. Um, I don't, I don't know
Coach,
how many kids are on a team there? How many kids are y'all having on teams?
uh, it all depends. So normally, you know, the whole idea of having level one, they should be having at least uh, 30, 20 to 30 swimmers in one team. And they have about four teams. That's about 90 to 120 swimmers. Yeah, four teams. Now, it's the problem there is that, you know, what is the criteria for you to reach the level two, the level three, and the level four? Okay, it doesn't. For me, I don't agree that you can just reach level four without a serious criteria of achievement. Yeah, because level, yeah, you will be accepted on a certain university, and the university will be expecting that you will deliver. And the level four or level three, there is an expectation that you will produce an Olympian or what. And the level three and level four is a highly paid coaches.
Yeah, I think certainly that's done in the United States as well. The achievement that your swimmers has a has a specific uh, criteria for you to be able to get to the higher levels of that certification process. And there, I have two sides of me on that. I really think that the information that you acquire over time and that you internalize over time is more important than the achievement for two reasons. One is I actually think achievement will come from that as a natural process. But part of achievement is also how lucky you are to have certain athletes that can compete at the highest levels, particularly for an Olympian. I mean, it's in the United States, there are many, many great coaches that have never had an Olympian, so, I really, um, or even a national champion, in that you can really be a great coach on a local level and a great coach and never have anybody achieve to the highest levels of swimming. You have to have some good fortune for that to happen, I believe. And I've had two of them. And I consider myself totally lucky, to have had them. You know, I mean, if they weren't as good as they were, if I wasn't lucky enough to be coaching them, then I would
Coach,
not have had an Olympian.
it's like this. Okay, you can be a doctorate in sports science or physiology. Okay, take note. You are you had been educated for about 8 to 10 years with regards to the science of muscles. Now, here comes there is a coach which is not educated as sports science or what, but produces an Olympian who made who made uh, a top eight or top four in Olympics. So that is now the issue between who is to be respected on for example, a sports authority. See, who is supposed to be respected? A producer of a top four Olympic, in Olympics, or a doctorate on sports science. That's a big, actually, for me, that is existing on other countries, that for them, if you're only a very productive coach if you are a sports science graduate. Oh, so how can you give value for those giving medals in Olympics? Okay, Glenn Mills is not a doctorate. Okay, but produces part of the 72 golds of Jamaica. Okay, the coach of Kipchoge, the coach of the um, what's this? The Lakay, Lakay, 4 world champions in Benguet. They are not sports science graduate, but they produces 4 world records. Okay, so how do you value it? Is it valued by the level 4, level 3 coaching certification, or the sports science graduate, or doctorate of physiology? See, how do you respect it?
Yeah, well, I do think, I mean, if you have athletes, especially if you're coaching them consistently to higher levels, then you're somewhere, either the athletes have taught you or you've taught yourself things that are required to know, um, especially if you do it over time. But I think there are two different things that need to be really awarded respect differently. So, like I said, I think if you, I mean, you could really look at a coach and see that the coach is producing, you know, good results over time, and he's really put the effort into learning things like physiology and kinesiology and that, and reward him accordingly, or her. Um, Whereas I think there are also, if you have a coach that is consistently creating excellence over time, that should be rewarded too, because somewhere along the way he's learning or she's learning the things that are needed to help that athlete. Because it's a whole different psychology really that you're involved with when you're coaching an athlete through the process of qualifying for something like an Olympic team, and then actually going and performing at the Olympics and reaching a medal status or something like that, or a finals. That's it's not easy. It doesn't come easy. It's a lot of coaching that happens in that process too.
Okay, coach. We are very thankful for your your giving time on helping us educate the coaches. Okay. Do you have any more questions, guys? Because we would like to wrap up. Okay. This is a successful World Coaching Conference that we exceeded above 12 o'clock in the midnight. Okay,
Wow.
started before 8 o'clock in the evening. Wow. Okay, this is the second day of the World Coaching Conference. We are so thankful with the presence of the president, Joel Amanonce Calvo, and the executive vice president, Mark Rauterkus, and the vice president, Akib Khurshid of Pakistan. Okay, We are very thankful. We don't have the right words to say thank you, Coach Dudley of Duncan of the Hall of Famer of ISCA. Again, we will be sending you the certificate of appreciation by email. We would like to take a photo, guys. Can you open your windows?
Hey, Dudley, I do want to follow up with the 2 or 3 things. I'll send you an email.
Okay, great.
Next
Thank
to,
you, Mark.
Sure.
Thank you so much,
thanks-
guys. Thank you so much. Let's call it a night. Thank you.
Good night,
Thank
all.
you.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you, Coach.